Right, we're out here on Red Moss, which is a raised peat bog, and I'm here with Peter Carnegie of Tiny Blair Farm, and we're just going to chat about the work that we've been doing, that I've been supporting you, and Peter, you and your son Daniel, who's in the digger, has been working on across the bog. So the first job you did was in about 2019, installing about 550 peat dams onto the bog, restore the bog, and trying to hold the water up here in the uplands to try and reduce the amount of flood incidents further downstream. Daniel's just starting the work. Can you just explain what he's doing?
So this is Daniel, my son, forming a peat dam. So we take turf off one side, turf off the other side, dig the ditch down to the bottom of the ditch, flip the peat over, compact the peat down. You need more peat, so he'll take another turf and set it to the side. So then he takes extra peat from there, puts it on top of the dam. Generally it's 2 extra buckets of peat.
And you're taking that now from upstream?
Always upstream.
Always upstream.
Taking the pool upstream, yep. So you want the dam up to the height of the surrounding bog and compact it down. So you're making a good solid dam. And he's pulling the turf back on to seal the bare peat. And you lift that last bit and just swing it over on. And that's the dam sealed again. Because
you don't really want any bare peat, do we? Because that's going to release carbon.
Yeah.
So what he does is take the vegetation that he's taken off, and we can see he's putting the vegetation back on the top of the peat dam.
That's correct, yeah. It seals it again.
Yeah.
And now we'll collapse the hole behind now. Just really to help it heal up quicker. And it forms a pool of water behind it, so you know what height the water table's coming to. You pull the turf into there and finish it off. That's your peat dam completed.
How far apart are you putting the dams just now?
To put them in at 10 metres for this scheme. The first scheme for the agri-environment was 15 metres apart. I would feel it's slightly too wide for holding water.
So they've got less water between dams,
yes,
for the dam to hold back?
Less pressure on each dam. At this time of year when it's wet, it'll fill up within an hour.
Within an hour?
Yeah.
I'm the 3rd generation that's staying on Tiny Blair Farm here. We've been here for 40 years. And back in early 2019, I went on a peatland regeneration course. It was really informative. We went up to Dunrookin, just up there, and seen some work that had been done in previous years. It got me really intrigued in it. And this year we got a brilliant opportunity to go into this phase 2. We've done a bit over in the Carse over there, and we're over here on the Red Moss just now, just doing some dams, plastic piling, and some peat hag regeneration. The machine of our choice is the Hyundai 8-tonner, and we've put these 900mm wide tracks on it, which are just absolutely fantastic for spreading the weight. I've learnt a lot in the last 2 weeks. Just understanding what the water can do and where it's going is a massive benefit. I've been given a fantastic opportunity here to get onto the bog and do some regeneration. I highly recommend it to anybody of any age to get out here and give it a crack.
We're here on Red Moss and we're looking at some dams that have just been recently constructed, and this is probably one of the larger ditches that we would do. These dams were only put in place when?
2 days ago.
2 days ago.
2 days ago. So.
And already they've filled up with water, and you can see the chain, the water that's heading downstream. They're all the little pools, and they're holding back the water, and it's raised the water level right up to the surface of the peat bog. And that's what's really important about restoring the bog. You want to have the bog as wet as possible and the water table as high as the surface as possible. Peatlands are one of the biggest land land-based storage systems of carbon in the UK, and so they're really, really important to restore our bogs.
They're solid dams that you're putting into the ditches. You're making crossings for livestock. I can't see it being any issues for farming.
And the great thing about all these little pools that we've created behind the dams is that they're absolutely fantastic for insects, and the whole idea is that the sphagnum mosses will grow and build and fill in the ditches, and eventually over many, many years, hundreds of years, they will convert to peat. So that's what we want, to have a nice wet bog with a multitude of different vegetation and not drained, and keeping the water level really high. This is some of the work, Peter, you did under the Agri-Environment Scheme when you put in about 550 peat dams. This has worked really well. I mean, if you look into the pond, this is the sphagnum moss here, and you can see it holds loads of water. That starts to recolonise, and that's what the peat builds up, and over hundreds and hundreds of years, as it breaks down, it turns into peat. And right across the bog, we've got a whole range of different vegetation. This is cranberry. It's a really important bog vegetation, and we've got a range of heathers and heaths across the bog, and at certain times of year you'll see the cotton grasses. The cotton grasses are favoured by a whole load of wildlife, and especially grouse.
Yes, aye, there's a lecht of black grouse here.
They'll use the bog for feeding, and there'll be red grouse here as well.
Also red grouse.
The water table has risen, and these pools and the insects, there's lots of feeding for a whole range of wildlife. It's holding back the water.
It is, and it's healing up very quickly.
Yeah, and there's not a lot of exposed peat because the vegetation has grown quite quickly as we're restoring it, that we're holding in the carbon. And that, I mean, although that not only helps with carbon storage and reducing greenhouse gas emissions, but it also slows the flow to stop flooding downstream, and also you're having a better, higher water quality, and that's really important, especially if your peat bog is within a water catchment, for a drinking water catchment, and it's much better for fish and for insects as well. Hill burns do have a certain amount of peat. It's those big flushes of a lot of excessive water going down and flushing down that erodes the peat, and that's what we're hoping to hold in here. Improving our peat bogs has a multitude of different benefits for us as well.